that said, I'm going to write do not tie outer wall and machine mounted receptacles together. So you can tie outer wall receptacles together all day long, that's fine. You can tie machine receptacles together all day long, that's fine. But do not mix machine mounted and outer wall receptacles together. We're going to keep those separate. Kind of along those same lines, I'm going to kind of draw this out first before I make a note, because it'll probably make a little bit more sense. So kind of drew a little mock-up there of what's going on in our shop. But, so how these receptacles are going to be fed, the machine-mounted ones and even the outer wall ones, is we don't have just a main shop receptacle panel like what we did in the office. We don't have a kind of a central place for them. So how these receptacles are going to be fed is the MCCs are going to kind of pick up that workload. Right? So each MCC is going to share a little bit of the load of the receptacles throughout the shop. So whenever we do this, of course, we want to prioritize our machine-mounted receptacles first. But regardless of that, if we have, like I drew here, an M1, and that's fed out of MCC1, then this M3 over here is kind of fed out of MCC2. What we don't want to do is, say, for example, of course, you're going to have more machines in here, but let's just say, for example, you had an odd number of machines in MCC1, odd number of machines in MCC2. Well, you don't want to say, oh, well, these two receptacles, they're just by themselves. Well, rather than making two circuits, I'll just tie these two together, and I'll make one circuit. Don't do that, okay? Do not do that. And the reason for that is just like kind of jumping between walls in the office. Now, we didn't do that. It's for lockout, tag-out reasons. So let's just say, for example, even if we did tie these two receptacles together, and the receptacles were fed over here out of MCC1, all right? Well, let's just say this M3 machine, it goes down, right? It just completely craps the bed. We got to tear it all out and replace it with a whole new machine, right? Well, the machine itself, it's 480 volts. It's fed out of this MCC2. So you, being the good technician you are, you go lock and tag it out as you're supposed to, right? So you come over here, you lock and tag out at MCC2 for the machine itself, it's 480. But we also have this live 120 volt receptacle. We need to shut that off too, lock and tag it out. Well, guess what? Now you have to come over here to MCC1 and lock and tag it out, because that's where the receptacles are fed out of. So now you're locked and tagged out of two different places, and you're disrupting workflow in a whole other zone of work over here, right? So maybe we have to use that plug for something on this M1 machine. So rather than, like I said, that just kind of makes everything messy. Like I said, you're locked out in multiple places, you're affecting other areas that you're not even really working on. So try to help isolate and limit where the faults are at. We want to keep everything together. So it's okay to tie machine receptacles together if they're all fed out of the same MCC, but don't be mixing receptacles between two different groups of MCCs. Does that make sense? Okay. So, I think I know how I want to word that. machine mounted receptacles together if both machines are not fed from the same MCC. Yeah, perfect. That's our description. All right. Then there's only one more little caveat to all of this. So since we don't have a main panel in the shop housing all these receptacle panels, all the MCCs are sharing this load. Of course, they can't handle as much as what we said in our office, right? And then even in the office, we kind of, if you remember for our ORP, we kind of strayed away, said we're going to stray away from the real world. We're going to say there was no size limitation to that one, right? We're not going to really apply that same standard in the shop. In the shop, we're going to say, no, we do have a real world cap on how many receptacles or how many breakers we can essentially put in a panel. So we're going to install this in the panel and stuff later on, but I'm just letting you know there are going to be panels inside of all these MCCs. Those panels can only handle a maximum of 16 circuits, 16 breakers. So when we're looking at our receptacles, we want to prioritize the machine-mounted receptacles. Kind of going back to this lockout, tagout reasoning, right? So we want to make sure that all the machines here and their receptacles are fed out of that same MCC, right? So if, for example, let's just say you had 16 receptacle circuits between machines. That's a lot of machines out of one MCC, but hypothetically, let's just say you had that fill up. Well, and you had no more space in here, but you also got outer wall receptacles in here. Well, how we're going to place outer wall receptacles and where they're fed from is based on proximity. Well, like I said, if you have some outer wall receptacles kind of over here, but you're already full in this MCC, that doesn't matter as much. You can just feed them to the next MCC. Because the outer wall receptacles, if we got to change out a receptacle on there, we're only locking out and tagging out one place anyways. So if it's not fed to the closest MCC, do I have to get a few more steps in? Yeah, but we're only locking and tagging out and isolating one MCC, at least in that panel, to go work on some outer wall receptacles that probably aren't going to be used as often, right? So you want to take precedence whenever you're kind of filling up those MCCs. So you're going to keep a running tally, because like I said, each MCC, they can only handle 16 circuits max. So kind of keep a running tally of all your receptacles and prioritize the machine-mounted ones, and then you can feed the outer wall receptacles based on proximity after that. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, when I say 16 circuits, remember, we're talking about receptacles up here. That 16 circuits has nothing to do with power circuits, right? So that 16 is only for the receptacles. The power circuits were already accommodated for on our elevation drawing over here, right? We already accommodated for all that space. But the receptacles, that's what I'm talking about with this 16. So MCCs, they only have a maximum capacity of 16 circuits. So again, does that mean you have to have 16 receptacle circuits fed out of there? No, but they can only handle a maximum of 16 receptacle circuits. So like I said, prioritize the machine-mounted ones first, being fed out of that MCC. Keep a kind of a running tally, and then once you got all your machine-mounted ones dedicated first, then you can do your outer wall receptacles and kind of feed those based off of proximity. Like I said, if the closest MCC to the outer wall receptacle is full, oh well, put it in the next available MCC that's closest to it. Does that make sense?
And that counts towards the ones with the machines too, correct?
Yes, the 16, that's accounting for both the outer wall and the machine-mounted receptacles. Yes. Yes. Good question. Yep. one other little thing, and this kind of has to deal more with the calculations, but with our receptacles, the rise and fall does change, and it is also going to be 50 foot for the shop receptacles, both outer wall and machine mounted. Now, the bunch I had yesterday, they asked to see an example of like the machine mounted receptacles. Would y'all like to see the same thing? Or do y'all feel pretty confident in putting the receptacles on the machines?
You should do it the same way as that, right? It's just gonna have the receptacle.
Yeah, it's just like installing the receptacles that, like what we did in the office. It's just you're gonna pick a side on the machine, mount a receptacle, and tie them together.
And then we gotta go back in our Excel sheet and fill out all that too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the rise and fall is staying at 50?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's for machine and outer wall.
Okay.
So there's no difference. If it's a receptacle in the shop, it has a rise and fall of 50 foot.
And we're treating that overhead door as a regular door for the.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it'll be still considered a doorway. So kind of the same principle, like your receptacles on both sides, you have to have one within 6 foot, but they don't have to be within 12 foot of each other. So it's just a regular doorway. Just larger. But y'all are good with the drawing? Y'all, yeah.
Okay, so for the calculations, basically, what you're gonna want to do is you're gonna want to probably start the drawing first and do all the, home runs for the, MCCs, and then get the distance, and then start your calculation, right?
Yep, so when I say they're very similar to the office, I mean, they're all but identical, right? So even if you come in here and you go down to your RC shop page, the table, the format, everything is almost identical. The only thing that changes on here is your notes over here off to the side. And it's just explaining the same thing, that, hey, your outer wall receptacles are 400 watts, still 1600 watt maximum circuit. And then it also talks about your machine mount. But everything else, the distance, the table, it's just like what we did for the office receptacles. Yeah. The drawing, even in the drawing, go back over here, drop down the layers, you got the same 3 receptacle layers. It's the exact same process as what we did in the office. So, and like I said too, we kind of talked about it earlier, but whenever you do go to do the office receptacles, not the shop receptacles, you know, again, you don't have to have the work zone and your power circuit layers turned on. So when you're working on the receptacles in the shop, well, the only thing you really need is just the machines. So, you know, get on your receptacle layer, and then you can turn off the power stuff, and like I said, kind of declutter and keep it clean and neat. And then you can put receptacles, and like I said, even if those 2 layers overlap, that's fine, right? You're not gonna put or turn on every layer and then hit print, right? That's not what these drawings are. You're gonna only turn on the certain layers that you need to print a drawing. Just very similar to like that example one back there, or the ones hanging up on here. Like every layer on all these drawings isn't turned on. It's only a handful of layers, one or maybe a couple of them, I said, turned on at a time. Print out that specific drawing and look at that. Okay. So everybody's good with the shop receptacles? I said, are y'all good with the drawing portion of it? I'm just asking because, like I said, the bunch yesterday, they asked to see an example. I just want to make sure y'all are good. Everybody's good with the shop receptacles? Okay. Drawing calculations? Okay. Well, that's on our agenda for this week. Like I said, it doesn't matter if you start with power, or it doesn't matter if you start with receptacles. You can do either one, but or start with either one, but both of these do need to be done this week. I just started with power because that was something new, and the shop receptacles was pretty straightforward. So, like I said, I know it's going to feel like a lot of work, but in my opinion, I don't think either of these 2 things are very difficult. I think they're pretty straightforward. It's just tedious, right? It's time consuming. It's just a lot of point and click, kind of data entry kind of stuff. So yes, I know it's tedious, but like I said, we're still kind of building that base of the pyramid, right?